Hey guys, thanks everybody for joining us this morning. We are very fortunate that we've got a couple of fantastic presenters for the new construction class. Christina Welch, who most of you guys know, is one of the, I think, the top agent in North Florida, one of the top agents in the state and the country. And Christina, would you want to introduce your guest?
Yes, I do.
And let me get out of the way.
So this is Katrina Watkins. Her and I worked together for years and years and years. She works with Glen Layton Homes. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that builder, but they build beautiful custom homes at the beach in Nocatee on your own lot. So when I say beautiful, like they are, I'm gonna move into one. They're really pretty. So, but Katrina, do you want to tell a little bit more about yourself? Because you've been in this industry a long time.
I have. I guess I started in 2003, as a matter of fact. So I'm celebrating my 18 something, a lot of years anyway.
Yeah.
So been doing new construction for the most part. Did a little spill of doing your side. I prefer the new side much better. No offense.
Yeah.
But it's been a great career. I love it. Very actively involved in SMC, and that's kind of where Christina and I met each other through the Sales and Marketing Council, and we both chaired and did our duties there. And
We did do our duties. So Sales and Marketing Council, I pitch a lot to Keller Williams just because I'm such a strong believer in the real estate agent and builder community. We're a stronger voice with more people than just a few people. So, yep. So we share those events often. So just a pitch for Sales and Marketing Council again. So if you guys can attend any of those, I highly recommend.
Hey, I'm going to make a quick plug for that, by the way. If we as an office are members, you guys have access to the events, and I would encourage you guys to join the Northeast Florida Association of Builders, the Sales and Marketing Council specifically. It's a great resource for you to get some fantastic information. B, it is really important that we provide a voice and an opinion and input there as well. The more people we have that get involved, the more influence we have. So I would highly encourage you guys to it'll make your business better. It'll make your relationships better. Please take a look at that, and I highly suggest that you join. And one other thing, by the way, if you have questions or thoughts, don't hesitate to jump in the chat bar also.
Yeah, this is kind of interesting. I'm going to try to make it as interactive as I can as possible for the people on Zoom. I always like to poll the group and see what are you wanting to get out of today's meeting. So we can start there.
So put your answers in the
I know there's only 3 people in this in here, so I'm going to stare them all down.
Hey, this is Dawn Engel. I have 2 customers that are new construction, my first time from just complete dirt. And I just want to know how I can best serve them, not only provide value from my standpoint of wanting to make sure I'm involved in doing the best for them, but what really is in their best interest and how I can help facilitate things.
Okay.
great question. Christina's writing it on the board, so we're going to make sure we get to any more questions.
Christine, I would ask, if it's such a seller's market now, has that changed anything with the way new construction operates, runs their business?
Yeah.
Not for us, Christina, but can't speak for all managers.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely talk
Yes.
about that. Okay.
Definitely.
And just so you guys know, we're going to park lot some of these questions, and Katrina and I are going to go through this timeline with you guys, and then we will try to make sure that we touch base on everything as we go through it. And we really want to make sure you get something out of today's class, which is why I always kind of like to go around and make sure that we're touching base on any of the issues that you might be facing and get those addressed as well. Does anybody else have any more questions on the Zoom?
You can unmute yourself
I
too,
think it's first.
or put it in the chat.
It's like going to the Google.
And the one question that is on there, Dee was asking, how do you join the SMC?
SMC?
Yep. SMC.
Well, since Keller Williams is already a member of NEFBA, you as an agent can join any of the councils within NEFA. SMC is the one Christina and I prefer because it's the biggest and best. But for what we do as a business, is probably the best council for you as a realtor to join. And you can simply just go online and you can pay, it's I think 120 a year.
Yep. I'm gonna put my email in here so you guys can email me and I can send you all the information on it as well.
You can go to NEFA.com. There have an events tab there, so you can see all the events that we have every month at the organization and with all of the councils, not just SMC. So you can see all the different things they have on the calendar.
And the Sales and Marketing Council is really trying to bring education to the agents and affiliates in the community. So Katrina and I actually taught this class recently. And when they asked what I'd like to teach at the office, I'm like, oh, well, let's just bring it to the agents at this office. So that way you guys can see a little bit of what the Sales and Marketing Council does. And then there's networking events as well. And then we actually have the Jacksonville USA coming to speak at our breakfast this month. And they're super important for our community because they're the ones bringing in developers and businesses, large businesses. So they brought in Amazon. There's always people that they're trying to petition to pick our community versus others throughout the United States. And so very interesting information.
Want to be the local expert, that's a great way.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I'll give it, so for those that just have joined us, we're taking any questions you'd like to discuss throughout the class. So if you have one really quick to add, we have about 4 topics so far, which we can take more. Dominique?
Communication and updates.
That's a really good
And having difficulty giving information sometimes.
From the side
motorists.
agent.
Yeah, so like how we go, like the process of giving information and updates.
That is a really good one. Thank you for asking me.
Well, I think we can get ready. And if you guys think of any more questions on Zoom, just feel free to pop them in the chat and we'll get to them throughout the time here.
Yes, thank you. And I try to, I have a tendency to talk a lot. So if I get off the track, you guys just keep me back on it. Okay, so I have to give credit where credit is due. Our transaction coordinator, she's actually our transaction manager now, created this timeline for us to teach within our office to kind of give some insight into what's currently going on. You'll notice we have 3 to 4 months at the bottom for a typical market, but right now we're not looking anywhere near that because of where the builders are as far as getting supplies and how backlogged they are at builds that are coming out of the ground. So for a typical track builder, you're looking about 6 to 8 months. Custom home builder, you're probably
From slab, 10 to 12 months.
10 to 12 months. So track home builders, in case you guys don't know, are people, you go in, you have 4 different options, or they've already chosen it for you, and what you see is what you get. Semi-custom is gonna be more like David Weekly, where you can kind of go in and change walls, change windows, add a lot of structural items. And then custom, of course, you can start from the ground and go up.
Yep, start from canvas. And we have that confusion a lot, where a lot of people come to us, well, my homes is custom. Well, if you pick the plan on paper and pick the few options, that's semi-custom. Custom is, you have a conversation with an architect and we draw the plan for you and we build the home. And it's always a construction perm situation as far as your loan is concerned for custom. And a lot of people get confused about that, but it's not that difficult, but you do have to close up front. And that's the difference between a true production builder and a custom builder. Production, the builder is carrying the interest payments while they're building the home for you. And when we're building your dream home, fortunately, you're going to have to carry that on that side with construction firm. So
When you say slab, when it starts from the slab, that means the concrete's already poured.
correct.
And how long does that process take?
To get to the slab.
Yeah,
That's a lot of question marks.
Yeah.
Because when you're starting from a blank piece of paper, the back and forth between getting it just right and then getting a permit can take 3 to 5 months on top of the 10 to 12.
wow.
Okay.
Didn't know
So
that.
it's all in making decisions, getting it priced out, and it's very time consuming, but it's original. So there's a lot of time that you have to put into when you're going that route.
So we can kind of start this new construction timeline from the beginning. So you've met with your customer. Let's try to show value from our agent standpoint. You have a customer, they called off Zillow or Realtor.com or off your website, wherever they get your information from, and they've reached out to you. How are you going to help them narrow down their search? Obviously, there's so many builders in our area. You have to be the expert. So that's why I highly recommend that you as agents get out into the community. You go visit these new construction communities. You talk to the site agents. You talk to them about your product because you want to be able to help narrow it down. If you're not helping that buyer narrow it down, guess what? They're driving around on the weekends and they're going to sign a contract without you. And then you're going to say, what about those 2 hours I spent on the phone with you going over your options? They don't really care at that point because you didn't help them narrow down the community. And then from there, once they've narrowed down the actual floor plan, they sign a contract, then the builder is going to start their permitting process. And that's the longest part of the process. So
maybe if we get back to the loan process before
yeah.
they actually start construction, you might want to touch a little bit on that because that was one of our questions. Got to make sure they qualify. Hopefully they are not in your car without being qualified first, because there's nothing more frustrating for you to have shown them homes that they can't qualify for. And also the qualifying, they may qualify for here, but they're more comfortable at the payment here. That's where you need to show them where they're comfortable. Now, are they going to go out on the weekends without you? Most likely. But you know, you just got to make sure that you show your value and tell them the process of going out on the weekends without you and the steps they have to follow, because a lot of the builders have different rules and regulations about bringing them across the threshold and getting paid your commission. So you want to make sure you know the process for the builders. But the loan process is where we're talking about. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Going back to what you were saying, Christina, about being updated and going out and looking at these new development sites.
Right.
Is there an easier way for an agent to get updated on what sites are coming up?
Yeah, so most of the builders aren't going to put those sites online until the infrastructure has gone in and they can start really selling the lots and talking about the lots and seeing what products are going to go in there. So there's a whole process behind why they don't post them immediately. But if I hate to keep pitching sales and marketing council, but I do, because they talk about these new communities coming out of the ground. So I know offhand ICI has 4 communities that are coming out of the ground because they have the land to develop on. I just don't know price point at this point of where it'll be, because that's going to be determined of where the market is once it's fully developed.
Also, you might try registering. Most of the builders have a realtor link on their website. So that if you register yourself as an agent, a realtor, then they will automatically send you emails about any updates about upcoming communities as well. That's the best way. And I would advise you to do it for all the builders.
Okay.
What about
wanna work with.
like becoming E-Town certified and NACATI certified? Is there perks in that of getting the ends on new construction in those areas?
So that is developed by the actual group that is developing the community as a whole. So yes, they'll send you out any new developments they have coming in, any new commercial developments they have coming in. But you really kind of want to know and network with the builders that are in those communities. A lot of the builders have an internet consultant, which can go over all of the communities. And those internet consultants are there to help narrow down your buyer search. So let's say you have a buyer that's looking in the 350 to 450 range. They can reach out to, like, David Weekly has an internet consultant, Madame Homes has an internet consultant, and they can help narrow down those communities and send those communities directly to you. And then it'd be up to you to actually go out and drive them.
And also touching on the certified agent portion, the developer gives them a icon. You get a logo or certification that you can use as far as you've been an agent that really knows the ins and out about those specific communities.
Yep.
And they make you do education and updates, I don't know, quarterly or so, a couple of times a year, to make sure that you are fully aware of what's going on. And they give you that logo to post with your certification, and you can use that for your own marketing.
And since we're all the best marketers in the world in this room, you're going to push that out. And then obviously people are going to find it online and want to work with you versus somebody else who doesn't have the logo because you're a certified expert in that specific field. It's a really good way for the developers
Oh,
to get
yeah.
their information out there. I was glad when they developed it.
They pumped it.
Now, if you go to Nocatee has a welcome center. So if you're a Nocatee certified agent, you might know this. Oh, and E-Town knows as well. You can actually go there and register your customer at that center, and they're registered for most of the builders within that community as well.
So back to the loan process.
Yes,
Like
loan
I said,
process.
hopefully they know what their qualifications are before they get in the car. Again, you'd want to make sure that most of the builders will have a preferred lender that they work with. And typically there are incentives for your buyer if they're going to use that preferred lender. However, you want to make sure that your buyer is already qualified before you start working with any of the builder lenders, because you don't want to waste your time, number one, or for the client.
Yeah.
But there's like, well, I've already been qualified with, say, VyStar. Well, great, then you'll have no problem getting qualified with any of the builders, and that way you are not wasting any of your time. Now, they will have on your, typically the contracts will be financing contingency upon, I don't know, 5 to 7 days. Typically, most of the builders have different time frames, but so in the event that they can get qualified with your, or with their lender so that they can get the incentives. But pretty easy process.
It really is.
Painless.
And if your buyer is adamant about working with their own lender, just be very cognizant that they might not get the incentives that the builder's offering, especially in this market, because those lenders are working with the builder for a reason.
You have, Dee asked 2 questions.
Okay.
When going back to what you were saying about paying up front
Okay,
with the,
construction firm.
yep, and then she's, I guess, I don't know if that's, Dee, if you're looking for advice about you had trouble getting a lender to qualify for new
Yeah,
construction,
They're
a
not,
buyer.
all the lenders don't do construction firm.
They do not.
But first of all, it is a closing process that happens up front. So the buyer is an interest-only payment. So for instance, if they close and then the builder is going to ask for a draw for $100,000, I'm just using rough numbers, then they will have to start making payments, interest-only payments on that first $100,000. Then once the builder does, get the slab of the framing done, then they're going to ask for another draw for another $100,000. Now your client is making interest-only payments on $200,000. Okay, so you do that all through the entire bill process till you get to the end. And then once we call it our final settlement and the house is closed and ready for them to move in, then at that point, the lender will do what is it?
It's like a reclose.
Yeah.
It's not a refi because they've
No.
already done the interest only, but that's when their final
Final
mortgage amount comes out.
With principal and interest at that point.
And you're only paying one set of closing costs during this process. If you're not familiar with it, you're really going to use it for custom builders, or if you have a buyer who's like, I really just want to build a house on my own lot, that would be a definite product of a loan that they would use then. Otherwise, they're going to have to come out of pocket cash to pay for the lot and then for the bill process as well.
And
So-
who sets those interest rates? For the interest only payments, is that based on the loan
lender.
they're getting, the lender?
And how much they're getting and their credit worthiness, just like any other loan scenario.
actually-
But they can do, say for instance, if they just find a lot and they want to build a custom home on that lot, you can do it all in one. But the key is finding a seller that's willing to wait until you have plans and everything ready to do it all in one. So that's the hard part.
It is, but it's not scary. So you
It's
guys
not
don't make it scary.
Hold your hand. And I'll be happy to answer any questions, if you guys wanted to on a one-on-one, get a little more information about it, and I'll be happy to refer you to some lenders who can provide those services for you.
So for Dee's example, would you encourage her to look at another lender or go under, because I know you said some of the builders require to go through their lender. I guess for Dee, would it be, did you go through the constructions lender or you just went to a lender that you picked? I guess that would be, she would have to look at maybe a different.
Well, I can tell. So I had trouble. I had someone who wanted to buy new construction and she had no idea what she could afford.
Mhm.
And we didn't have a neighborhood picked out or anything. And so I was just trying to help her figure out what her budget would be. And so the
Okay.
first lender I tried told her that it was too far out because she would be buying something in like a year with the whole process, right? And then the second lender gave her just a number based on the conversation with her and didn't check anything. So I just didn't really, the whole thing
Yeah.
kind of confused me.
Yeah, that's not very comfortable
No.
to hear that. So I would suggest trying to figure out what you feel like her month, like where she's comfortable around her monthly payments. So if she says, I don't know, $2,000 a month, I mean, that's a really cheap payment. So then you're looking at probably a $250,000, $350,000 builder, just guesstimating, and then take her to go see those actual builders and have her have a conversation with the actual lender that's associated with that builder. So that way you can get her pre-qualified. Otherwise, I know we've got in-house lenders here that we work with directly where they're open to have a conversation, very similar to your standard pre-qualifying your buyer before you take them out process. You just want to make sure that they've had those conversations up front. And even though it's a year out, most builds are taking a year to build. So the builder's not going to start the build process until that buyer's approved for a loan.
For sure. And they need to keep their credit worthiness through the entire build process.
Yes. Do not buy furniture or
Or
cars
boat or
or quit your
car.
job.
Right.
Yes.
Mhm.
So once the buyer makes loan application, then they go to the design center appointment. So you as an agent can show your value by going to that appointment and helping keep them in their budget. Because there's a lot of bright, shiny new objects at this design center. So what we've seen, our buyers go in and they want this and they want this and they want this, but at the end of the day, they really can't afford it. And they're going to end up with $100,000, $200,000 more on a purchase price for a property that they weren't anticipating.
Right.
So we recommend going to those appointments and walking through the cost of all their additional upgrades and then talking to them. You know, maybe you could do this after closing. Let's have carpet installed and maybe you do this down the road. So that way you kind of keep them in where they say they want to be and where they can afford to be.
That's what's important.
Also, I just want to point out at the design center appointment, if there are any structural changes that are made or being thought about made, you need to point that out from the very beginning because that's part of the permitting process. So if the builder starts the permitting process and your buyer decided they didn't want a back porch, and then 4 weeks down the road, they're like, oh, I want a back porch, permitting's not completed yet. The builder has to restart their process because they have to go back, redesign the property. There's probably going to be a charge for that. There's most definitely going to be a charge for that.
Yes.
Then they have to go try to get that new drawing approved with the city. So if there's any structural changes, you want to advise them that it needs to be done at the very beginning
Okay, contract.
at contract because it's going to change the timeline of the build and could cost them more if they make structural changes down the road. Any questions on that? You're monitoring, aren't you?
Hey, Christina, I do think that communication piece is important. Because a lot of times a customer may get and say, hey, we were supposed to close at this date. And they forget that 3 months prior, they made a change in the bill that required new permitting and the like. So
Yes. And I do have to advise you guys, a lot of the site agents are new in the industry because everybody's been busy. So there's been a lot of hiring going on as well. So you don't want to ask them how new they are, but you might want to ask specific questions like how much time is it taking for permitting? And then that way you can kind of gauge what's going on with that particular builder and what their process looks like, because everybody's process is completely different.
But you definitely would prefer to be there when at contract so that you can help them make the determinations of what structurally needs to be done now. I mean, so that's, and it can be porch, the garage. The garage is always a big one. No one's ever thinking about how will their car fit in the garage. You know, so you really need to be very detailed in helping them. That's where you're showing your value, is definitely helping them make those decisions, or at least having the discussion about it. So they don't get to the road with, you didn't tell me that. You know, no one has a crystal ball. Site agent doesn't have a crystal ball. You don't either. You've got to have the conversation with them to say, what do you want? I mean, some things you can get, depending on the builder, some things you can't, but at least you're having the discussion.
And also, when you guys are in there, the options are changing frequently for these builders as well. Like we've even had a buyer go in and there's an option sheet for a frameless glass shower surround. Well, when they went to contract, that was not part of the options at the time.
Mhm.
So the options had changed from when they originally went into the property to when they actually contracted. So if that was important to them, our agent should have been present to make sure that that additional item was added on to the contract, because if it's not there from the very beginning, it's not included.
Right. But communication, you need to initiate at the very beginning as an agent. I want to be copied on every email to the buyer, period. I mean, they can do that. They probably don't want to, but they can. And just that way you stay in the midst of the conversation, because you don't want to be caught blindsided when something goes wrong. Then all of a sudden that builder agent wants to call you. Hey, no, I want to know the good news as well as the bad news. And the best way is to communicate and ask them up front to please, CC you on all of the information that goes out to the buyer. That way, when you communicate with your buyer, you're having an effective discussion. You're not blindsided. So
No, you don't want to be blindsided
No.
at all. Now, with that being said, who is the correct person to talk to? So every builder is set up differently. If you're building custom, Katrina is going to be your main go-to. 100%. If you're building a tract home, the site agent is hired to sell properties. Their job is not to update everybody on the process. So from there's usually a closing coordinator that's assigned, or a superintendent that will go through what the changes are that are taking place with the actual property. I hear a lot of times that, I've emailed the site agent, I've emailed, they're not responding. They could just respond back and give you the right person to talk to, but everybody's busy in this market. So don't hold that against them. Actually go by and see them and get the correct person to speak to. So that way you're completely up to date in what's going on with your buyer's build process. And then your value as an agent, it's going to be kind of quiet. You need to set the right expectations from the very beginning with the customer. You're going to work through your loan process in the beginning. You're going to go to the design center. And then from there's this whole behind the scenes that's taking place, and you're not really going to have anything to do with it, because it has to go through the county to get permitting. And then the builder's working on getting all their trades together so that way they can clear the lot, make sure the lot has the amount of dirt it needs, and then start their laying of the plumbing and all that additional stuff that goes on from there. And then you get lumped back into it. So it does go quiet. You need to make sure that you are communicating that. And then once the permitting is complete, the builder should have some insight into when that's done, and then you can get kind of back involved in it.
usually they'll have, your builder will be assigned to your client at that point. Once it's back from permitting, you'll have a meeting with them and you'll go over the things that you selected structurally. They'll go over the design selections as well to make sure that, so his process can run a lot smoother when he has all the decisions in his hand and he can build a home, so that give him the ability to start it and finish it.
Then from there, my recommendation as an agent, the build process is going to start to go to frame. I would make a point to put on your calendar to swing by the property, especially if you have an out-of-state customer, and take a picture of the property. So that way, oh, I drove by the house today, here's what's taken place. So that way, again, you're showing value to your customer on their side. You're going to want to check with the site agent, not the site agent, the lender, to see if there's any updates. The lender's not going to order the appraisal on the property till it gets close to getting that CO. But we need to make sure that the buyer is still providing all of their updated paperwork. Just like in the beginning when they make their loan application, they're going to need to keep updated docs to them. So the lender's constantly asking for the last 2 months of bank statements, or making sure that their tax returns have been turned in, that all their paperwork is there, and that their financial security is still there from when they originally made the loan application.
No new cars, no boats.
No new cars, no new boats.
It happens.
Or jobs.
It happens.
And
Or
jobs.
jobs, right, exactly.
We have it's labeled the 10 commandments of buying a property, which goes over that, but we like do's and don'ts of buying a property. And please do not go out and buy furniture. We have to stress that so much because everybody gets so excited about their new house. They want to put new furniture in it.
Yeah.
You as an agent can attend these meetings. There's a pre-drywall meeting with the builder usually. That'll take place before the drywall goes up. At that meeting, you're making sure that outlets are installed where they are according to like the plans. We've had builders leave off outlets before, floor outlets, plumbing, AC vents. Double check it, because when the drywall goes up, we've seen it actually covered up before as well. So at that time, while you're there, you might want to go ahead and get the information from your buyer as do they want to complete a home inspection or not? Because there is a process to actually get the home inspector approved to be able to complete an inspection at the property. Does anybody have any questions on any of that?
There
I
was
do.
two,
This
but I don't know if they apply to.
I had a question about when you go with them to the design center. I'm terrified of doing that because I am not savvy on all the different materials, like which is concrete, what's marble, you know what I mean? So do you have any tips on how to prepare for that?
I know, I mean, all I can say is I'm not a designer. I'm definitely not. So all I know is when I go in, I will talk to the design studio person. I'm drawing a blank on what we call them. What's included with this price? Because there's different features that are included with each property. So once they start to increase in value, that's where you start to become cognizant with your customer about, if you're increasing this, remember, it's going to be the entire property. And if it's wood flooring, you're $12 a square foot for 2,500 square feet. So you guys can do the math on that.
But, and if you want to get a little more familiar with the product or the materials that are used in the different models, you just, I know the society just is a really little swamp right now, but some of them have design centers where you can have previews. So that would be a great opportunity to do previews at the design center so you can get a little more familiar with the materials that are being used, the do's and don'ts.
And the designs person will explain the differences between the various materials, right? So this
They will.
is kind of your customer preference, but I would think part of what you're doing is being there to guide them and remember.
Keeping them in
Also
budget.
the budget.
You're definitely there to keep them in budget because they, you know, they get all this shiny and sparkly and they want to, oh my God, I love it. You've got to keep them in budget.
So your only really concern is going to be levels, not actual material. Like if they're a level 1 and they go to a level 5, like their budget is going to be blown out of the water.
And remind them to see the level with that is included. I did a preview with a friend of mine and I was like, where's the standard stuff? Let's start there. If they don't like that, then we can move up to the levels. But their job at the design center is to upsell you. And you just got to, you know, try to keep them in budget. But I think it's a typical percentage, about, what is it, 10%?
10 to 15,
Yeah, 10% of the purchase price of the home is typically the upgrades that they spend at the design center.
Yes.
So.
And you also want to just remind them they don't want to be the most expensive house in the community because they might not get that value. But if they want to live in the house that way because that's just how they want it to be, then just remind them again, that upgrade's for you. When you go to sell it, we might have to change it.
And just remember, if it doesn't appraise, there is not a builder out there that is going to say, oh, well, that's okay, we can cancel. No. The amount that it doesn't appraise for is going to come out of your buyer's pocket. Beyond the amount.
And that is typically written in the design center contract because they will sign off on all their upgrades at that point. So just make sure to reiterate that to them as well.
Last one, how do we know their budget?
From the lender. So remember at the very beginning, before they'll even start the permitting process, once they sign a contract, their next step is to actually make loan application with that lender. You need to be on the phone with the lender, making sure what their budget is and keeping them in there.
And I think that incentives question was based on what you mentioned with the lender. They offer certain incentives. I think that's what she's asking.
Like design center allowances and things like that.
Well, and that's really going to be dependent on the builder. So those incentives, builders offer incentives sometimes to draw in buyers. Currently, they're not having to do that because there's not enough inventory in our market. Previously, years ago, you could call a builder monthly and there'd be different incentives, like a $25,000 credit at the design studio. The lender incentives are based off of the closing costs typically. So not all the time will they cover all of the closing costs, but they sometimes will cover a majority of them. And it's just going to be dependent on the time and the builder.
You had a question, did we answer that? I'm sorry.
No, it wasn't.
Okay. Okay.
And then the last one, Dawn had a question about inspections.
Yes. Don, do you have a specific question about inspections?
I do. So I have, as I said, 2 customers. Both are starting new construction homes, semi-custom, with some builders, both out in E-Town. And I've mentioned to both of them, hey, definitely here's an article about the different types of inspections that you can get, that are recommended to get. And there's like 3 different phases. When you were speaking about inspections, it kind of sounded like it was only one that you might recommend. Do you not recommend them at the different areas, that they?
Usually not. Most of our inspectors will go in after the house has been completely built and run all the systems. We also have inspectors that recommend buyer moving into the property and coming before the end of their warranty period. So that way the house has been lived in and all the systems have been run for however amount of time. We really never do the pre-inspections, like pre-drywall inspection for our customer, but I know some inspectors do offer that piece.
Okay.
So to know if they're doing it, and they'll need their documentation, needs to be provided to them, that they're fully licensed and all that stuff.
And insured. So that's why I say that's a process. So you will have to get the inspector approved to go into the property,
Right.
by providing all that paperwork.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
But let them know, you can't just show up with the inspector.
Right.
All right. So as we start to get a little bit closer, you will get a closing coordinator typically assigned from the title company as well. So you want to make sure you've got that contact, because all parties work together to try to get it closed. And usually if you're not in the loop, they won't keep you in the loop until they call you to come get your check. So you have to make a point to make sure that you're involved in this process. Otherwise, they don't see a value for you. But a lot of times what we do is we get all the information from the very beginning, and we will send an introductory email out to these people saying, hey, I know we're not here yet, but we would like to be included in all correspondence moving forward. And then they'll add our information to the file, and then they'll start copying us on anything that comes through. About this time, this is probably when the appraisal is going to be taking place as well. So you want to make sure that the property appraises. Please make sure you're in contact with the lender and get a copy of that appraisal, because you don't want to show up the week of closing and find out the house hasn't appraised. And now your buyer is just finding out. And now you're probably not going to be closing on it unless you can get something figured out. And usually they're going to have to bring money, especially now.
Y'all, y'all seeing appraisal issues frequently at this point?
I see all kinds of appraisal issues, but not always on new construction.
Let me rephrase it.
Yeah.
Do you see it more frequently with new construction, or is it roughly the same as you would expect?
Usually new construction has been pretty on point. I've only had it happen a couple of times in previous years where we've had appraisal issues and buyers have to come out of pocket. Because they loaded up at the design center and the builder has already put all these upgrades in the property, and they signed off on a document saying that they would pay for it if the house doesn't appraise. So isn't it fun how all these things work together?
Hey, quick question. Is that a common clause in the contract?
At the design center.
We will bring the difference to the table if it doesn't appraise. Is there an appraisal clause like that normally, or?
It's only at the design center when they add all their upgrades on. It's at the bottom saying that that they'll bring, I can't remember exactly how it's turned, but
In your experience, are the because I've had it to where the builders aren't telling the buyers about it, and then that's when I've had appraisal issues, is when they go to the design center, load up, and they're like, well, you should have known you've added all these extras. So are they often saying it ahead of time?
That's why it's important for the agent to be present, because the design center team does make an upsell off of whatever they sell at the design center. So they might not, I would hope that most people have everybody's best interest at heart, but it doesn't always happen.
I know most or some of the builders actually cap you off. That's how much you can actually add on to your own to kind of keep you in that appraisal range that they see fit. You notice I've seen that with like KB, I think DR does it too.
Okay, so those are gonna be more of your track home builders,
Okay,
and
you're
that's.
talking custom.
Or semi-custom, and that's because price point's probably a little bit lower and cash in hand's probably not where
Right.
it should be. I'll try to say that as PC as possible. Okay. Okay, any other questions on design center appraisals and lender?
Can they back out? But you just said no, because they signed a contract,
Yeah.
right?
They typically cannot back out without being in jeopardy of losing their binder. Let's talk about real quick with the seller market changes, because I just want to make sure I touch base on that. So I know this sounds crazy, but some of the builders are back to what they call a lottery system, where they're actually going to be taking a binder, a deposit for a lot, but they're taking it from multiple people, and then best grab wins essentially, or whoever has the best loan approval. So it is happening. There are multiple offers on houses, even for new construction. So they're in the same market we are on the resale side. So if you go to the site and you're like, you can't do that, they can kind of do whatever they want at this point, because they've got a line of people wanting to buy the same properties. With that being said, as well, price point continues to go up for builders. I don't know if you guys read the national news, but lumber prices are 145% increase year over year. So don't be surprised if you sold a house last month and then you go back and it's a $35,000 increase
Or high,
or higher
much higher.
on the base price.
Yeah.
So
You said 145%?
year over year.
Yeah, they were saying like agents were getting quotes requoted like a month later, and it was like 80,000 over.
And that's why it's very important. Like if your buyer had an option sheet from when they went in a month ago and now they're going back, you need to make sure they have an updated option sheet and an update price sheet, because those prices are changing so quickly right now that you need to make sure that they're aware of that as well.
Hey, Christina, that is such great information, because this is how you we maintain our credibility as agents, is by letting the customers know what to expect, whether it's for better or for worse. The more they know up front, the better it is for them and the more credible we are.
This is Dawn. I'm sorry.
Dawn.
I have a
Yeah, go
question
ahead.
about that, just making sure I understood correctly. If they go and visit the site and they get the options, but they're not yet under contract, the prices can go up. Once they've gone under contract, their option pricing should not increase, correct?
Not necessarily. So some of the builders, and I'm not suggesting you sit down and read 75 pages on their contract, but they do allot a certain percentage increase for construction cost. So every builder is going to be a little bit different. The site agents that are newer might not go over that with your buyer, but if you ask that specific question, they'll get it answered for you.
They may have an escalation clause, as I do. Because it is, we had one client right now, we've got to go back and, increase their price by $15,000 because the lumber is just outrageous.
Mhm.
But they knew ahead of time. We know what areas the conditions are really, really fluctuating. So we let them know, hey, your windows cost could go up, your framing cost could go up, your concrete price could go up, whatever. And there's a separate document that we sign specifically for that instance. So it's a terrible market right now for all of that, but.
Well, it's just educating your buyer as well.
Yeah.
So if you ask that question to the site agent, what do you guys have a clause for increases in materials throughout this build process? Because remember, if they're sitting down in January and their home isn't completed until November, those costs could have gone up 2 or 3 times by the time they're actually ready to close.
And that's why some builders are not doing dirt sales, they're doing spec sales, because they can control the pricing on that right now.
Right, so what happens if my buyers go under contract and they like, okay, this is under our budget, but just barely, but we really like this, we're approved for 300,000 and the way we have it now is 2,995, whatever. And then the prices go up and exceed their budget. Who's liable for that if they can't come to the table with any extra money?
I think it's just going to be dependent on what that clause is for the builder, because every builder is going to be different. Some builders won't take those small of margins.
Correct.
Yeah, so is that, I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to keep
There was
it.
another question.
What was the other one?
Average binder price?
Oh,
Is it a percent?
no, again, that's going to be dependent on every builder as well. Your tract home builders are going to be a little bit lower on what binder deposit is collected, and your custom and semi-custom are going to want a pretty hefty deposit.
So it sounds like to be the best agent in this market is to do your due diligence and clauses and do your due diligence and education. So
Yeah.
your buyers aren't going panicked to the table.
Knowing that what the builder processes specifically are, because everyone can be just a little bit different.
Right.
And explaining to them, just because they're picking their structural, that's not a custom home. I mean, they need to know that. A lot of them are really confused with what that process is. So you just need to know, the details between each builder and what they offer.
And I know it
So-
sounds like a lot of work, but if you separate it and do 3 builders a week and go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you're spending an hour at the builders and you're learning so much from each one of them.
We have a wonderful event that we have about 3 to 4 times a year. It's called the SAM Trainer. Pre-COVID, it's a wonderful event where we would take an area of town, all the buildings, state faculty specifically, and we'd go out for the entire day with 50 to 100 agents on a bus, and we go to each one of the builders in there, and that gives you an opportunity to build that relationship with your side agents, or at least know who you're talking to on the phone for the face. And then you have more information that you can share with your client. I mean, it's about being more informed for sure. So they're doing it a little differently now during COVID. I think they're doing more of a drive along process, but still we have predetermined locations in the areas of town that you're in to do the Nassau County.
Yep,
So the
so
next one coming up.
if you've gotten calls, what's that big community going in North Duval or Callahan area?
Fire.
Wildlife.
Wildlife.
Yeah.
That's old. Pete.
Yes, I know. That one's been
That's all
around.
it is.
Yeah.
So the
Sorry about
tributary, the tributary is going in, it's another large planned community in that specific area. And so Wildlight is definitely a great community. And I think there might be a few houses, model homes from that one, maybe going on that one. But you really need to kind of get out.
To those who are visiting the communities, like anything else we do, the more relationships you have, the more relational you are, the more likely people are receptive to you if things do come up as well.
Yeah.
Correct.
And just like, I mean, when I first started, I didn't know anything about anything. I'm not from here. I didn't grow up here. So I was just new into real estate. And so, I'd call these internet sales consultants and be like, where do I need to take my buyer if they're in this price point? And then they would give me a list of all the communities and I would go out and visit all of those communities. So that way, when I walk through the door, oh, hey, Katrina, it's so great to see you again. I already have that relationship versus who are you? What are you doing here? And so don't try to sell at a new construction community. The site agent has been trained to do that process. So the best thing that you can do to help your customer at that point is just go over what their wants and needs are, what they don't want as far as price or lot or whatever the case might be, and just kind of step back and let the site agent do their job from there.
So we have a handful of questions. I don't know if you want to.
Uh,
So the top one is the track builder. So I guess the difference between a track builder and all the other types you've been talking about.
Yes, so track home builder is somebody that you walk in, everything's included, and that's because they only have like 2 or 3 options on certain types of properties that they build. They would definitely be a track home builder. D.R. Horton, Express Homes with D.R. Horton, KB Homes, yes. So even though you can go into a design center with KB Homes, if you are at a certain level with them, that's why I say why levels are so important, then that's when you start to add additional costs. So semi-custom homes would be like David Weekley. So if
Toll
you,
Brothers,
yeah, Toll Brothers.
ICI.
If you walk in and ask the site agent, can I move walls and windows? That's a huge comparison as to how you know what the difference between track and semi-custom is. So Toll Brothers is another really good one because they do a lot. ICI is a great one as well. ICI also though does custom home building and build on your own lot. And so they do have a design center where you can go in. But like Katrina said, if you're sitting down and like designing your house from the very beginning and they're not preset floor plans, then that's when you get into custom.
So I'm gonna skip Dawn's really quick, but Megan had asked, are site agents pretty open to working with other agents, or do they make less commission if agents bring the buyer? She apologizes if she's a rookie to this.
Oh,
No, good question.
We were all rookies at one point.
Absolutely.
So I
I'll
think,
touch on that one.
yeah.
Yeah, so, because I've worked for several different builders over the years. And yes, some builders have a different commission scale for their site agent. If they could get paid one commission if there is no agent, and they get paid another commission if there is an agent. Some have a flat commission, you know, no matter what, which is what I prefer. And I have worked for a builder that it was opposite. My deal was great. If I give you good service, you can bring me 2 or 3 more deals. I don't care if I'm getting paid less. It's about the quantity that you're going to be bringing and the quality of service that I provide to you. You're bringing more. So, but all agents don't think like I do. So that is the process, you know, so it can be a sliding scale, but you do need to find out what is, because I even heard some builders are reducing their commissions.
Yep.
Right now.
Some of them are reducing their commissions.
So
Some
it'll vary by builder.
it's gonna vary by builder. Some builders don't really pay a separate real estate agent commission fee. It's their realtor commission is included in their marketing costs. So like, I know David Weekley does that. I can tell you that offhand because Denise taught the class with us before and she was very specific. We have this amount set aside for marketing and real estate agent fees are included in that. So regardless if an agent comes in or not, they still have the same set costs. So to answer your question, make sure to register your customer at that particular build location, because not all locations, if you register at one, they might not transfer to another.
Most likely they don't.
Especially right now.
And especially if you walk into a situation and there are 2 agents in there. My pet peeve.
You're saying there's 2 site agents?
There are 2 site agents and again, some of them are partners and some of them aren't.
Yep.
You need to know that. You need to ask them up front, you know, because if your buyer would come out, you've been having this relationship and talking to agent A, and then the buyer comes out and starts talking to agent B, then you have a problem.
So when you're making your site agent visits before you bring your customer in, those would be good questions to ask. Like, who do you guys work as partners? Do you work in conjunction with each other? Are you separate? Do you work other communities? If I register my customer here, will they honor that in E-Town or whatever other community that they might be going to? How do you guys get paid? I know it sounds crazy, but they know how much we get paid. So is that included in your marketing costs, or will your buyer or our buyer actually benefit if they come in without an agent? So
Would it benefit if there's an agent in our office let's take Megan, for example, if she's got a buyer looking in like 1 to 3 areas, if she like went on our Facebook page and asked, like, does anyone know a site agent at this? Like, would that help? Because people
Yeah.
have relationships with other site agents.
100%, yes.
Good ones and bad ones.
Yes, we can always recommend somebody. I just don't always see Facebook because I try not to be on social media that often because I end up watching videos. So, but yes, and you can always text me or email me. I will get to that a lot faster. Where are we
I
at?
have no idea about manufacturing.
Um,
I have no idea.
yeah, I'm not,
So it sounds like 2 different ball games there.
you mean like prefabricated home or trailer?
The new, like prefab homes.
Yeah, it's probably gonna be very similar to the CP where they would buy the lot and buy the home separately, but I don't have a lot of experience with that piece of it. That would just be my assumption. Because I don't know if there's a lot of, I don't know who does prefab homes locally.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. All right, so new home orientation, obviously, we always recommend you go to that with your buyer. It's where they blue smirk the home is what I call it, because they'll take blue tape and go all right around and fix the items that they've seen. At that point, that's where your inspector also wants to kind of come in and make sure your inspection takes place at that particular point in time. The final walkthrough will take place after the new home orientation and then your closing. Most builders will set up all 3 dates at the exact same time, so you can go ahead and put all of those dates on your calendar. I will tell you that sometimes when they go through and pick items out that need to be fixed, they will not be fixed prior to closing. You need to make sure you're advising your buyer that the builder does not have to fix all of those items prior to closing because they have whatever their warranty is after closing to get all those items remedied.
Is the warranty a common timeframe for most buyers, or is everyone different?
Most builders offer a 1 year usually.
Most like a 30-day when they get in and
Mhm.
actually start to live in the home, they may find some things in the.
Yeah, to kind of make a punch list. Yeah.
And then they come back again at the end of the year.
So if there are some relatively minor things that still need to be corrected,
Right.
and closing date, or closing time comes, do you put anything in writing about
Oh,
us to be corrected?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at the new home orientation, you'll fill out a sheet that everybody signs off on what still needs to be fixed. And or if the inspector's there, the inspector sheet will be provided back to the superintendent or the builder and make sure that all of those items are at least addressed.
If it's a larger repair, like 2 windows being uneven, right? So they're gonna have to, I've had that happen. They're gonna have to come back, right? And cut it. And so if it's a bigger repair like that, do you still suggest that they close? Or would you?
It would need to be heavily documented before I would advise them to close.
If you have that, reach out to Lee or Connie.
Yeah, I mean, because that is a pretty big issue. Now, we did have where like there was a pinhole in plumbing, and since plumbing's in the slab, we could see water coming up through the floor, so they actually had to dig the slab up and fix it, but they did it after closing, and everything was heavily documented and written out. I will tell you, there are a lot of not larger builders within our area currently that do not provide any type of warranty except for like a 210 home warranty after closing. And there's nothing wrong with 210 home warranty, but it's not like your standard builder warranty. So when we say some things can be fixed after closing, not on those types of properties. I just want to make sure you guys know that, because there's a lot of smaller builders that have appeared in the market and they'll leave as soon as the market takes this wave down.
So the
Yeah.
national builders, that's kind of standard, but
Yes.
but be careful with this.
If it's somebody that's just opened a new construction.
Will they fix
property.
anything cosmetic before closing, or is it usually we'll just take a list and we'll get to it later type of thing?
Usually they'll take a list. It depends on when their trades are available, which is why it might not get done prior to closing, because they preset all of these timelines typically. And so, and the trades are backed up, so sometimes it can. take a
Yeah,
little
the
longer.
reason, my parents built a custom home and they laid the pavers completely wrong in the backyard and they had to rip them up and redo them.
Oh, no. Oh,
So
no.
that's just things like, because I've seen
Yeah.
it, I just, you know.
I know. Well, I think we've seen it all almost. Well, I should say that. And then I just got a
Yeah.
letter. I don't even know what that's about. Okay. And then we talked about final walkthrough and then closing. I cannot stress enough to get a copy of your buyer's settlement statement prior to closing. If you have not had an opportunity to review those numbers, they could be wrong. Title companies are humans. They make mistakes. I've seen prorations incorrect, like for taxes, for HOA, interest rates not typed up properly, commissions completely left off. And so you don't want to be making those adjustments at the closing table. You kind of want your buyer to go and have like a nice experience at the closing table and not have to be worried about the numbers. So just double check that.
They get their keys.
Then they get their keys. 12:01. Does anybody have any other questions? Oh, wait.
There's only one.
Site selection. I really think that that's going to be dependent on your buyer, Dee, for site selection. Do they like the water? Are they familiar with what can live in the water in Florida? And the preserve locations.
And your sites will be priced differently depending on that as well.
Yes.
Yes.
One of the things I have noticed over the years is the builders will tell you about the woods behind the properties, but they can't advise you on if anything will ever be built back there. So you might just want to pull like an aerial from the county record and see what that property is zoned for, because it could be sold and a freeway could go in behind it.
Oh, God.
Or a McDonald's if it's commercial.
The reason I was asking about the site selection is I went with a friend and she works for a builder and she was pointing out all these like pipes coming out of the ground. And she's like, you want to make sure your buyer, you know, doesn't buy this lot because that's where the electrical box is going to be. And so she was talking about all these complicated things that kind of intimidated me. So I was just wondering if we needed to know that.
Well, all builders have a plot plan from when the community was originally developed, and it should show the easements on those particular lots already. So that would be an electrical easement that the county would need to have access to.
But the green boxes that they see in the yard, you have a lot of instances where they're on the contract for a lot, and then all of a sudden they've got a green box on their lot.
Mhm.
So that's where, you know, you've got to ask the agent to see the original plat, not just the community map, because that can be the marketing piece that they use. It's not the hard copy of facts about the dirt.
Mhm.
So you want to ask for that, and they will not move you free of charge if that happens in the process. So.
Yeah, so always ask to see that plat map from the original because when the communities develop, they have to get those approved by the county. And that's when the builders determine 40, 50, 60, 70-foot lots.
Awesome.
Sorry, one more question.
Yeah.
So if your builder rep, if they're just not giving you updates, is there like a way to go over their head, like to speak to someone? Like who do we reach out to? Is it like a directory we could look at on their sites? Like
I would, well, after this, you can tell me who it is. And
There's a
But
few.
then after that, I'd go visit them and ask them who the direct contact is for the actual build process. Because a lot of times it's not the site agent.
Yeah.
Like 9 times out of 10, it's usually not. And that's just because the site agents are hired to go out and sell property. Just like a cashier at a grocery store is supposed to be doing the cash register, not helping
Helping
out.
disputes.
Yes, not the customer service place. So, and yes, so most builders will have it divided up. 9 times out of 10, it's not the site agent though. Okay. Anybody else?
I had one that I posted.
Oh,
Do you recommend that New Home Source website for searching for new construction? Is that what you use?
you haven't? Okay, so we've sat site for several new construction builders. You actually have to pay money to be on that. So I don't necessarily recommend it because not all builders are going to pay for that. You can go to the NEFBA website and get a list of their current builders that are members, and they each have their own individual websites. But if you email me price point, I can send you most builders that will be in a certain price point.
Okay, thank you.
Guys, thanks for the participation from everyone on the call. Thanks particularly to Christina and Katrina. This great information, and these ladies are very professional, very busy. Thank y'all for sharing your time and your expertise with us today. You have Christina's email address as well, so if you have any other questions, or if you want to send them through me, I can forward as well. But thanks very much to everyone here. I think we recorded this as well, so we'll get a recording out also. Thank you guys very much for the participation.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
you.